African American Oral History in Prince George's County, Maryland. This is a series that explores and captures the rich and diverse contributions of noted African Americans. Each has a unique and personal story, all told in their own words.
My name is Sylvester Vaughns, and this is my oral history. Charlotte is now a major city, but at that time, the part of the city that I was born in was like outside of the city limits, where it was rural, as a matter of fact. It was a little town, but it was somewhat rural because we did farming in and around where we lived. We had one elementary school in the neighborhood, which we all went to, 1 through 6th grade, I think it was. And there were 9 members of my family, 9 boys and girls in our family, mother and father, nine children. And of course, as I said, we worked on our father's farm. And during non-farming time, he worked downtown at furniture stores, places like that. My mother did day work at some houses not far from where we lived. I was the next to the youngest child. I was the youngest boy. One sister younger than I. All the other brothers and sisters are older, of course. We lived with people close by. It wasn't in a rural long distance from each other. We had neighbors on each side, across the street and down the street, where we lived and worked with and played with and grew up there. My father was John Vaughns, and my mother was Minnie Parker Vaughns. My mother, they both grew up with large families also. My mother's father was a minister, and the grandfather was a minister. And they were both from Lancaster, South Carolina. And I had one brother, oldest brother, that was born, I think maybe in South Carolina, as I recall. Then the others, of course, all grew up in North Carolina. And our house, we all lived with 9, that would be 10, 11 people living in that house at one time. And I think we had about 3 bedrooms, or, you don't have living rooms. That room is used as a bedroom also. Of course, as I said, we worked, we farmed, and we farmed on land that was owned by some other people, white people basically, in the area. It was like what you call halfers, where you raised food, or whatever you raised, you kept half and you gave the other person half, gave the owner half. Raised cotton, corn, peanuts, potatoes, had garden stuff like tomatoes and stuff like that. Cotton was the hardest part for as I was concerned, because of the work that was involved in it. You had to hold the cotton, keep the weeds out of it, and then of course when it developed, you had to pick the cotton and you carry it to gin and gin it into big bales of cotton, and we sold it, of course. I didn't see it after that until I guess we had clothes that we had cotton in it. We used, it's amusing, my dad eventually bought a tractor, and we thought we really had come up then at that time. Because they said during the same time my mother worked, day work, where she'd go up and she'd work maybe half a day or something, and then come home. We had a good life, and as people now talk about being poor, I guess we were poor, but we didn't know it. And I don't even think we were poor in the sense that we didn't have. We had food every day. We could eat 3 a day, and we were healthy. We lived a good life. Now, we were a Christian family. We went to church, and I mean, that was an insistence. It was no question about whether we were going to go to church or not. We'd go to church, and not too far away from home. Sometimes we walked, and it might have been a good distance. But for kids, it wasn't a problem to walk to church. Didn't have a lot of after our activities at church because of the distance you had to go to get there. And churches, many of our churches were out in the rural area. The one we went to, Weeping Willow AME Zion Church, which was a big church in North Carolina. We had a school right in the neighborhood, and where we lived in Charlotte was a little place called Greertown, and it was named after the Greers who owned most of the land there, which my father bought a house from. And my father did own his house that we lived in. And there was a school, of course, there at in Greertown, or Billingsville Elementary School, and it was named after one of the old African-American men who had settled in that area, Mr. Sam Billingsley. So ours was a Billingsville school where we all in the neighborhood went to, from 1 through 6th grade. And then after that, of course, we went on a bus, caught a bus, and went further out in the county, out in the country really, to a school called Clear Creek School. That school eventually name was changed to J.H. Gunn School, named after one of the teachers of that school who died during my time there. Went there from like 7th through 12. And I graduated from that high school. I think it was about 11 kids in my graduating class, which when I tell people that now, we had 11 kids, they thought, what in the world, what kind of school was that? And when you talk about 700 or 800 kids graduating from school. But it was a pleasant experience. I think that I was one of the smarter kids in that 11 group of students. My best subject was science and stuff like that. Because basketball, baseball, we didn't do as football at that school. And then, of course, after I finished that, I went a year at Carver Junior College, which was located in the city of Charlotte. It operated out of one of the high schools. And that was, I think, when they first started doing junior colleges in that area. We had one white junior college and a black junior college. I was Carver Junior College, and the other one was Charlotte Junior College. So still segregated schools at that time. During the early years, we were boys being boys, chasing girls and things like that. But there was, you have to remember that there was a separate kind of social life, whites and blacks. Now, I knew some of the things that white people did because he used to work in clubs where they went. And they were doing no different, but they were just doing it where they were. In the city, in Charlotte, in the area, there were things like the Masons, which a lot of people in the community were part of. And I think they had things like the Lynx and Jack and Jill. They had those kind of clubs. They had sororities and fraternities, all the segregated ones. People seem to enjoy doing what they do, of course, doing it alone. The schools, of course, were segregated, and we sometimes complained about that. And I tell you what we really complained about, at least I did, was when schools, and this is an interesting thing, white people ran the school system. And when time to pick cotton, they would close our schools for maybe several weeks in order that we could go out and pick cotton for people who had cotton field. White schools didn't close because they stayed in school. And we had this little song we used to sing, I don't know if you've heard it before, was that planted this cotton in April on the full of the moon. We had such a hot, dry summer, that's why it opened so soon. Cotton needs a picking so bad, cotton needs a picking so bad. Cotton needs a picking so bad, they're gonna pick all over this land. Now that was for us to sing because we did the cotton picking. And That was the one thing that I remember. No, of two things I remember about segregated schools: that closing down, and books that were had been used by other students, and then passed over to us. Teachers, we had good teachers. We had teachers who cared about us and about children learning. I graduated from high school in 1953 from, of course, Clear Creek. Well, it was actually now had been changed to J.H. Gunn High School. Um, Graduated. I had the desire to become an attorney. And I had, of course, applied for it to some schools. I think the University of Michigan I applied for, and I don't know why, but I did. And I was notified that I was accepted. I would have been accepted at University of Michigan. Well, all of that's pie in the sky since my folk ain't got money to send me to Michigan or almost anywhere. I had a brother who had graduated from Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte several years before that, and who had become, or was about that time becoming, a dentist in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. And he said to me that if I went to Johnson C. Smith, he'd help me. And that would have been the biggest help I could have had. And of course, I could work during summer. I went to college, junior college 1 year. Next year, then I switched on and went to, which was in Charlotte, and then I went to Johnson C. Smith for a year. And I just fell in love, I guess, and decided I didn't need to go to school no more. I thought I knew enough to make it. I could do pretty good on jobs. And I knew, I thought about as much as anybody else who was in school. And I was seriously, and I said, well, I'll take out this year and I'll go next year. And you know how that is. You never get back. And of course I got married, and then we started to have children. And then that was now to try and find a good job, so I could say. And I think what we did was found a pretty good job. I worked while I was in Charlotte, I worked at a funeral home with some idea that eventually I'd become part of that funeral home. This was a black funeral home. I had a strong objection to the way that African Americans were treated in my state, in my county. And I took that out, as a matter of fact, on those who were in power, which were at that time, it was the Democratic administration in Carolina, always. And I took it out on them as being unresponsive to our needs. And I said, well, by golly, if this is the way they are, I can't be a part of that. So I became a Republican then in high school. And then I became active in the Republican Party. After graduating high school, I joined the Mecklenburg County Young Republican Club. And it was a group of young people, so I felt very comfortable with the kinds of things that we were talking about doing and winning elections. And we eventually did win. After I finished high school, we won. We elected a congressman, Charlie Jonas from North Carolina, 10th District. Did something that had never been, well, I had that had never been done. That was we elected a state senator, Republican from the Charlotte area. We elected a fellow to the city council in Charlotte, Hot Sock. And we did, and I was part of that group, and there were people. It was pretty active in our community, politically, and I think they were not so welded into a party as maybe people are now around here, or maybe even there then, because they cared more about what benefits that we were getting than benefits that they were getting individually. So I gave some serious consideration to maybe running for office one day. But at that time, I was quite young, and then trying to get a family going, and that was going to something that had to come along later. Matter of fact, it was like a new thing in the sense. I think the Republican Party had not been a very active party even in that area, and the most activities coming from the young people, which the organization I joined, the Young Republican Club, and that's where most of the action came from, and we had some I think pretty good, very good response from the party, because it was like a new party, a growing party, and they was like take anybody, all comers, and they didn't have any objection to us because we would help swell the numbers, and we got a hell of a good respect from that party, whereas the Democratic Party, at least there in that time, just took for granted. And I don't think that's changed much, but when I was growing up, we recognized that our biggest problems were political problems, and those problems would have been the results of action and activities, or less of action and activity by the Democrats who were in office. We had folks, the governor of North Carolina, Governor Sanford. You had I. Beverly Lake, who was an architect of anti-school desegregation. You had guys further down south like Bull Connor. All those folk that we know and we had seen on television and heard so much from, and the race baiting, were all Democrats. Even Strom Thurmond at the time, well, his heyday he was a Democrat. Bilbo, all these guys, and our whole history and our whole knowledge about the political activities were our understanding that the political process was from Democrats and what they did in the South. Now, of course, for that reason, I think, I know it was my reason, and that there were people like Dr. King. Dr. King wasn't, didn't go around with a sign on his back saying I'm a Republican, but he was. There were people in Charlotte. There were the principal of schools. There was a principal, one of the professors at Johnson C. Smith University, and I didn't know this until I got involved, and I found out that they were also. They didn't wear signs, but that's where they just did not feel comfortable being in the place where they were being treated the way we were being treated. And of course, the Republican Party was somewhat new in terms of what it had to offer, and the acceptance of us was because we helped make the numbers, and we won elections, and we carried elections in Charlotte out of our communities for Republicans in Charlotte, North Carolina. We were in Charlotte. Jonas carried that district, our area, and it was practically a district. People who ran and won in our state legislature, right out of Charlotte district, and that's because that's where most blacks lived in that area. So it was an interesting thing. It was an interesting time too for Republicans. I'm not sure that things have changed that much. It's just that we've got some people in some positions now to say that look where we are, because they're talking about where they are, but not done a lot more for the rest of them. One of the things I learned early about Prince George's County was its discrimination in housing. I had some idea that I could maybe buy a house when I was living in the district, buy a house in Prince George's County. I'd seen houses advertised in Bowie, in Bel Air, built by Rouse, and Levitt built houses. And I think they were like $19,500, 3-bedroom Rambler. It looked nice, because from North Carolina we like Ramblers. And I called to ask about housing availability. And so help me, this lady on this phone said to me, I'm sorry, but we don't sell the colors. Ooh, that's Prince George's County, right outside Washington, D.C. Well, I never forgot that. I used to read about police brutality in Prince George's County. And I never thought necessarily, since I couldn't move into Bowie, into Bel Air, I didn't think I'd ever live in Prince George's County. So eventually I moved to New York. I was working at the time for the Marriott Corporation, for hot shops. And I was transferred up to New York, up in Binghamton, New York. And in '66, I was transferred back to this area, back to Washington area, to work at Catholic University in the food service. Now I had, coming back here, I had to find a place to live. And I started checking, and one of the places I found was where I currently live, in Palmer Park. And of course, when I moved, I went out to look at the house. There were white people everywhere. And I said, maybe this ain't where maybe I'm not going to even let me have it. But I went and experienced, I went and knocked on the door next door. The house I live in is like a duplex, and I knocked next door to find out where the schools were in the area, because I had children. They wouldn't even come to the door. They were peeping out. I said, well, this might be an experience. So but I moved. I went around the neighborhood and I found out where the school was, right walking distance. So I moved there. I never had any problem with that family. I never had any problem with any family in Palmer Park, as a matter of fact. They were, I think that was just the beginning of what we call blockbusting, whites out, blacks in. And it just went continuously from that day on. Housing discrimination was attacked by some legislators and by NAACP and ACLU, where some blockbusting legislation was introduced and was successful, so kind of broke that up. But of course that led to more blockbusting, because they out blacks in, whites out. Realtors would actually encourage black people to move into certain neighborhoods. And I'm told that they would tell some of the white neighbors that blacks are moving in, or make sure that they knew that, and then offer them an opportunity to move out. And they would move out places like Bowie, I think Kettering, and they moved out of Palmer Park, out of Kentland, out of Tupper Mill Village, out of Seat Pleasant. They were moving out, and we were moving in, which was fine. Police brutality continued in the county until we started to do, and I think the biggest thing to stop that was getting black police officers in, which meant that there were other eyes on the activities as they went out, as officers went out. And then, of course, we filed a suit against Prince George's County Police to have them do some things that make it harder for them to get away with police brutality. And I said we, the NAACP. I became active in NAACP immediately, wherever I went. When I moved to Washington, I went in and joined. Matter of fact, I joined on the same day that Jack Kennedy was killed. I happened to be, because I just moved into Washington in November, and I went downtown to the NAACP office on a U Street, and they were talking about him having been shot. So I joined there, and then when I moved to New York, I joined NAACP, and then I moved back here. I only stayed in New York maybe about 3 months, and I moved back to Prince George's County, joined and became active in NAACP, in the Republican Party also still, and eventually became president in the NAACP. And And like I said, we filed a suit against the school board. We filed a suit against the county, 2 of them, one on police brutality, one on employment. And I still worked for Marriott, and then I came to work for Prince George's County in a program called the Model Cities Program. Model Cities Program was one of those redevelopment, community development programs that operate like out of HUD, out of federal government, where funds were made available to a municipality, to the county, and the county had carved out an area of the county, which they call the Model Cities area. And it had citizen participation because they allowed us to elect a board that had some influence on what and where. Staff did plans and development where money was spent out of that program, and other money was spent, like a couple of swimming pools that we were responsible for. There's some stuff that park and planning parks people did that we were responsible for. In the years around 69 or so, Prince George's County had a school system, operated a dual school system, and we all knew that. Some occasionally, Jesse Warren and Ruth Wolf would introduce a resolution to voluntarily desegregate schools. And of course, they would have public hearings, and we would testify, many of us, and including myself. And we had, I guess the NAACP was considered to be the lead organization in doing that, in getting people out to testify or to discuss with the board. And we usually had the communication with Jesse and Ruth Wolf. Other people around the country, NAACP was filing suits and winning. And the Swan case in Mecklenburg and was one I remember, similar to ours, which had to do with the distance between the schools and the busing thing. And the Swan was a busing case. We said to them that if they didn't do it, we would have no choice but to file a suit. And we contacted our national NAACP office, and they put us in touch with the National Legal Defense Fund, who would provide us with legal assistance if we chose to do it, if they agreed that it was a good case. And HEW, Health Education Welfare Department, had threatened Prince George's County withholding of funds if they didn't do a voluntary integration program. And of course, Prince George's County was stubborn. They just were not going to do it. And HEW really didn't want to withhold funds. So the choice was ours to file a suit, and file a suit with the assistance of the National Legal Defense Fund with a couple of attorneys out of Baltimore. And ACLU, local ACLU, joined that suit, and they were part of it with their attorneys, and we filed that suit. And I think it was 1971 when that case was heard. It was a quick case. It really did not last long. As a matter of fact, I heard people talking about this is one of the fastest turnaround cases because I guess it was pretty clear, and the resolution was clear. It would just have to be, kids have to be bused. And the county couldn't use the fact the cost of transporting students as a reason not to do it. And of course that went from the local fifth district court to appeals court, Supreme Court, all quickly. And of course the decision was to desegregate schools in Prince George's County. It was January 29th, 1971, I think, if I remember the numbers, the year. I even had a state senator come to me and beg, please give people down in the Kettering area. They wanted relief. They wanted to be relieved from the responsibility of having their kids to go to catch a bus and go to school, because they say if the kids in the neighborhood went to neighborhood schools, they'd have integrated schools. Well, we didn't operate neighborhood school systems. We operated a county school system. county school system had a responsibility for making sure that the whole county, as best it could be, was desegregated. So that couldn't work. They tried that a couple of places. Where blacks and whites from a neighborhood would come in and say, "Let us integrate our neighborhood school," and wouldn't that be satisfactory? Yeah, but then what would that do from the rest of the county? And it would not have worked. When the attorneys, we met with the attorneys. As a matter of fact, we met in Ruth Wolf's house, and they explained to us, to 8 parents who had agreed to be plaintiffs, bring their children in as plaintiffs, including my 3 children. We met, and they explained how it would proceed, that they would file, and of course, there was going to be possible retaliation as soon as people found out who was involved, who the plaintiffs were, because plaintiffs would be named in the suit. And people needed to understand that, and if they wanted out, they could get out then. And even further, the case would carry a name of one of the plaintiffs who would be considered to be lead plaintiff, and ask if, and of course explain that person might be subject to more retaliation, and whatever kind they couldn't guarantee. And they asked, and we asked, if anybody around the room would consent to their name being, and nobody did. And I was chairman of the Legal Redress Committee at the time, and I thought it was important that I give everybody a chance to do it, an opportunity. And nobody really wanted to do it. At least they didn't say they wanted to do it. And I said I would do it, because I know I didn't have any problem with that. I had no fear of it. Whether my job was in jeopardy or not, I'd fight that too. So I was just a fighter, I think. And that's how it got to be named Vaughns versus Board of Education, Prince George's County Board of Education. That's the name. And of course, that was the beginning of some attempts at retaliation, some threats, some, I guess, all kinds of stuff. At the beginning, immediately, as soon as it got out, telephone number must have been put up in the sky somewhere, because everybody in the world called, and call all kinds of names, and then many of them would just call and hang up, call and hang up, call and hang up, and I had instructed my children and asked my wife to allow me to answer the phone when it rang. I didn't want them to have to figure out what was happening, and I would answer the phone. And if I kept them on the phone, I'd talk to them about why things were being done the way they were being done, why they had to be done that way. Some people would talk. Some would just call me all kind of black SOBs and just hang up the phone. Worst problem I had was I was at work one evening, and Mall City's office work kind of dark. Maybe it was like 6, 7 o'clock, and I was still in the office, and somebody called over there and asked if that was the office I worked in, and they were told yes. And so, well, you tell the black son of a bitch you're gonna kill him when he come out of there tonight, come out of the building. And that, wondered, I guess there are some crazy people somewhere. Then I just ought to be careful. And that's what I decided to do. I knew I wasn't, they weren't gonna run me out of town, but I just had to be a little more careful about my movement. So I went down the back of the building, came out the back and walked up the street and came back down the street to my car. Yeah, they probably didn't know me from anybody else. So that was the only thing that really bothered. I used to get letters, it was paste and cut and paste letters, and I talked to the chief of police, and he said, well, just when you get them, just send it to me or something. Whether he did anything with it, I don't know. But I would just pass them right on to him. Let's see. I had Prince George's County. I was working Prince George's County then. And I was it terminated? Well, no, I wasn't terminated. I was Yes, it was. There was a plan to terminate. And some bogus reason, but I learned later that the director of the department where I was working, the human resources, community development and human resources, Dr. Clovis Smith from University of Maryland, had made a statement in the meeting about 3 people, him and his deputy director and administrative assistant, something. And he had made the statement that they had to get rid of me because the county didn't like me filing suit against the school or something like that. Now, I didn't hear that, but this is what this person reported in the hearing, that's what was said. So if that's true, then that was something that never, that was the end of that hearing, as a matter of fact. I think the county withdrew its action. There's been a couple of things. One is there have been an influx of people moving into the county who brought with them the kind of jobs that gave them, that they were able to buy houses, like some of the houses that are being built in the county now. The income level went so much higher for African Americans. As a matter of fact, brought the income for the county higher. And then the opportunity for African Americans' political process, opportunity in the process for them to be elected from our district, even where the blacks in, whites out kind of thing, that left us with where we elect our own council people, our own delegates. Because I remember the first black senator, first black delegate, and who became the first black senator from Prince George's County and state legislature, Arthur King. And I remember occasionally some other, Perry Smith, John Williams, or somebody would run for office, but they'd just get wiped out because of the way the process was set up to do that. Now it's opportunity for them to be elected office. But the sad part about that is that we have a school board that's predominantly black, delegates from our district are mostly black, council members mostly black, and people still having problems with the school system, and when we said that part of the reason that we had a poor school system, or poor for us, was because of white people running the show. And I often have to think now, if they don't run it anymore, why ain't it any better? And I think sometimes politics make strange bedfellows where they just forget about the real reason that they're there, that they sometimes too much personal thing for them, aggrandizement kind of thing for them, than be servants of people. And I don't know where we go from that. We just have to keep working that until we get the right ones who really want to make things make change. I'm glad to get a chance to say this. First of all, I was not a supporter of Barack Obama. And I didn't support him basically because I didn't think he had the kind of experience that this nation needs. For the mayor of a small town or something like that, maybe so, but for the country, I didn't think he had it. And I'm still not sure, but I'm willing to give him a chance to, hey, what can I do about that? But you can't help but have that feeling when you see a man that looks like me going down to the White House, and I didn't know when that would ever happen. But it does give one a good feeling to know that, and he's an intelligent person. See, and I'm glad about that. I think he'll make us proud to have been head of state of the free world, really. And I think I'm seeing that he's going to surround himself with some people who will keep him from making the mistakes that I was afraid he might make. People with experience in government in administrative government like they have, and I'm glad about that. So I'm no longer worried so much as I wish could have been a Republican, but it didn't happen that way. So I'm gonna be happy with that. On one of the shows on television where something like where the young people asking questions, and they started asking about what you want to do, and so help me God, I heard a couple of them say something about being president of the United States, and you didn't hear that whole lot of that in the past, but they've said that now, and that gives them hope, and gives them a reason and a desire to do, to keep moving, because they'll know that they can't do that unless they prepare themselves, and they don't have to worry about can't happen because I'm black. See, and that's one good thing about his serving. I mean, his having been elected. And so, and I've got grandkids. I got a little great grandson. By golly, that little fellow might be. And I got, granddaughter. I got a granddaughter who would make a hell of a president. She's in college now down in Xavier, and she'd make a hell of a president, not vice president. President, she would. I don't guess it was. I'd love to say it was my parents. Well, they inspired me to be good boy, and to be respectful and be a Christian, and that's all important to me. But to go beyond that and try to be something, be so much help to somebody else would have been maybe teachers in elementary school, because they thought I had some leadership abilities, and they encouraged that. They would ask me to do something, to lead something in school, and they'd give me an opportunity to do that. Even in high school, I was a thespian. And I was a basketball player. I was a coach. I mean, not a coach, captain, co-captain basketball team. So when they showed confidence in me to do something like that, and then the people I worked the funeral home I worked for in Charlotte. One of the owners of the funeral home had said, actually, it took me. He was probably the only African American Chamber of Commerce in the city, and he took me in with him because they had the chamber had a group of young people. I don't know what they call it, but there was a group of young people in the chamber, which was not members, and he didn't have any children old enough at that time, so he took me with him, and it was, I think, his idea that I would eventually become part of the funeral business, and I had thought that too, but they gave me some hope and encouragement, and he was politically active in the community. He was active Democrat, but not very active Democrat. He was a Democrat, but not very active. And I had an opportunity to work with people then who were both Democrats and Republicans in the city of Charlotte as I was growing up, and I'm talking about 17, 18 years old, that I was hobnobbing with old folks about what was going on in the city. I think any challenge that I've had relates to maybe my family, would be within my family. Sylvester Vaughns Jr., and he's an FBI agent in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's retiring probably another year or so. And then Olivia Vaughns, who is a job developer and member of the vice chairman of Prince George's County Board of Election. She's a politically active one. Then next oldest is Arlette Vaughns, who has this great desire to help people, and because of that, she's down in Spartanburg working child care. I think she left here saying she was going down there and she's going to get a job working in child care, and she did. She didn't even know where she was going when she left here. Then my youngest son, Sandy Vaughns, he works for the Prince George's County Executive Jack Johnson as a community. I'm not going to call him a community organizer. That's not it. But he represents the county executive in various community kind of activities and information back and forth. And he's a minister. He's a minister in the Church of God in Christ. One thing I can say, all four are children because of us, my wife and me, are active in somebody's church. All of them. Preparation. Prepare yourself to do. And a person doesn't have to know what he wants to do, much later. If you do, that's fine. They give you some directions. Be prepared to be responsible for your own actions. Be prepared to change directions if you have to. Be prepared to have people say good things about you and respect you. Young boys, young girls, both in my neighborhood, I noticed that the difference in some of them is how they respond and react to adults talking to them. There are some who just walk the street without a care in the world, and there are cares to be concerned with. And preparing yourself doesn't mean that you got to say, well, if I don't go to college, then I won't be anything. That's not necessarily true. I think that I kind of prepared myself by finding out, some things going on, and then trying to learn something about those things. So that's what I would say to them: just prepare yourself to be able to move about, make things happen. The partner I had in all of these things I've done, everything I've done since 1965, has been my partner, my wife, Doris Vaughn, whom I met in Charlotte. And of course, we got married. We started to have children. And she was just as proud of me and her children, and she worked all the time. She came here and immediately started daycare, child care in the home, and then took courses in early childhood education, got her certificate, became one of the first home care operators, licensed home care operators in Prince George's County, very active in that group, and ran the preschool at Kentland Community Center. She ran a preschool, and let me tell you something very interesting about that woman. I'll never forget it. When I was working in Model Cities, the president of the Kentland Civic Association called me and said, "Brother Vaughns, I need a favor." I said, "Well," he said, "I need you to help me to find somebody who might run our preschool." I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "It's a little school for little kids up to 3 and 5 years old." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Now I need somebody to run that." He said, "It's 2 hours a day for 4 days a week." I said, "Okay, how much you paying?" He said, "You only pay 50 cents an hour." I said, "Jesus, I don't know." I said, "You know something, Doc?" I said, "I don't know but one person who would do that." And I guess I was saying either that my wife was so dedicated to do something like that, or she was stupid, and she wasn't stupid. And when I told her about it, you would have thought she'd been offered a job down the White House or something. She immediately took it. And I guess, and it wasn't the money, an opportunity to do that. And she did, and anybody can tell you who's ever been associated with that Kentland preschool, what a job she did there. Matter of fact, there was one principal who said that she could tell any of the kids that came in her school that came from Kentland preschool. She knew. And I wish there was some way we could, and I know that there is, and I'm going to do this eventually, make sure that people know the kind of job she did. And I just never forget her as long as I live. We, in Palmer Park, the people in the community bought a bench and placed a bench in the park in her honor. At my church, we put up a big sign out front and this money didn't come out of my pocket. This money came from people in the community and in the church who knew her and worked with her. I'm going to be developing an award for my family reunion for people who get their responses in. The first ones get their responses in, because she believed in that when the family reunion notice come, get it back. And she never missed, and this was my family reunion. Every year we hold it. She never missed a one. The last one she went on crutches, because that was important to her. Family was important to my wife. And I just, I'm just thrilled to have been part of her life, and she mine. Everything we've ever done was because of the two of us were doing it.